This is Mac OS Ken.
Data held on iPhones and holding new iPhones. It is Wednesday, the 29th of December, 2021. I'm Ken Ray, and this is a special edition of Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by SimpliSafe. Get 40% off your new home security system at simplysafe.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. MacCast's Adam Christianson and I got to spend an hour or so with the good people of the Silicon Valley Mac User Group last week, talking over some of what we saw as the biggest Apple stories of 2021. Not surprisingly, some of those involved iPhone. Adam will talk about Apple's latest communicator in a bit, but we start off with the information held on these ubiquitous devices. I wanted to talk together about the NSO Group story and the expanded protections for children. They're not really the same story, but I'm gonna fudge it and say they are for two reasons. First of all, Adam and I had divided stuff up, and I had more than he did, so I'm making this one. But the other reason is because I really think that both of those actually sort of made consumers stop and think about not only all of the information they have on their phones, but how that information might be accessed by someone else or what people might be able to learn from it. Earlier, before we started, Linda was doing a news story about the NSO Group, and she said, listen, you're not a target of this, because you're not. Unless you are a captain of industry, a politician, an activist, or a journalist, you're not a target of this. And then most of those people are also not targets from this either. But NSO Group had a piece of software called Pegasus, and Pegasus is a zero-click bit of spyware. The user doesn't have to do anything, or the target, rather, doesn't have to do anything. It's always relied before on either having physical access to the phone or tricking that person into downloading something, clicking on a link, doing something like that. And now, all of a sudden, you didn't have to do that. Now, Apple's senior vice president of software engineering, Craig Federighi, said, look, they're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars doing this. And so that tells you two things. First of all, it's not the easiest thing in the world. And second, it's not happening to you because of the millions and millions and millions of dollars, as we say. NSO Group says they would never sell to anybody who would do anything wrong. The problem is they're governments, and they're selling to governments. And sometimes governments do things that we don't all like, including going after people who are protesting against the government or going after people who are reporting on the government. Sometimes members of a government have been going after other members of the government using Pegasus. When I say I don't mean here in the States, as far as we know. I mean, probably not. Certainly you'd like to think, but we don't really know. So Apple is suing an NSO Group to stop them from being able to do that and use it. They're not only trying to get them to stop using Pegasus, they're trying to get them to stop using any Apple software or hardware at all to make sure they just keep their mitts off of it. I kind of like the fact that when Apple, because they're not just suing to stop them, they're also suing for restitution, but they're going to take that restitution and give it to organizations that are researching and finding out this information. It's a bit disappointing to find out that it wasn't Apple that found out about Pegasus. It was Amnesty International, and I cannot remember the other organization, but there's a security side.
Probably the researchers at Citizen Lab, who is one of the organizations that Apple's going to fund with the proceeds from these lawsuits.
That's right. It's Citizen Lab out of Toronto, I think. And then I can't remember what Amnesty's tech side is called. But anyway, Apple, yes, they're donating to both of those organizations. And then any money they win from the suit, they're going to donate to those organizations as well. As far as the expanded protections for children, there were three things going on here. The first is when somebody asks Apple's virtual assistant for either information about if they feel like they've been victimized by child exploitation, or if, on the other hand, they're going out looking for stuff that they shouldn't be looking for, if they're looking to basically victimize children. There's a whole new set of answers coming from Apple's virtual assistant and search that basically try to intercede, that try to direct people to resources that could help them rather than just, serving them the information or, not knowing what the heck they're talking about. Absolutely nobody has any problem with that. The other two parts people had a couple of problems with. There was a thing that Apple has actually gone ahead and put in where if on a kid's account, the child is either sending or receiving images that it looks like have nudity in them. Originally, Apple's plan was they were going to say to the kid, hey, are you sure you want to? And that was followed by, okay, but if you do, we're going to tell your parents. And a lot of people had a problem with that one because you don't know that the person controlling the family account is actually the parent. And then you're also just opening them up to a world of potential recrimination from the parent as well. It's kind of weird to me that was the sticking point, but okay, Apple said, fine, we're going to go ahead and keep warning the kids. We're going to keep telling the kids it's okay. They don't need to look at this image. They don't need to send this image, but if they go ahead and do it anyway, that's between them and, whomever. Apple is not notifying the parents at this point. The other thing that really lit the internet's hair on fire is Apple is planning to match photos that are either stored in iCloud or photos that are uploaded to iCloud against child sexual abuse material, or CSAM as it's called. They're not going to be looking at the picture, but they're going to take the picture, they're going to turn it into a hash, they're going to have taken all of this other known CSAM, turn that into a hash as well. And so even though they're not laying the pictures over each other, they're laying the hashes over each other. And if those hashes match, they know pretty much what's in your picture. I'm surprised, actually, Apple is letting more of those than I would be comfortable letting through. I think 30 is the number they said, around 30. If you get around 30 of those in your iCloud account, then they're calling the cops. They got one or maybe two, because one could be an accident. It's just surprising to me they're going that high on that number. But anyway, Apple has gone ahead and they did the Siri thing and the search thing immediately. With 15.2, they did the thing where if a child is sending a picture that probably has nudity in it, they're going ahead and warning that child. And Apple has removed the part about CSAM from their website, but they're still doing it. So Apple actually, I think it was around the same day that the 15.2 update came out, so about a week ago as this is being recorded, they took that part off their website. And a lot of people assumed that meant that Apple had backed down, that they had relented, that the people who were against it won. And then The Verge got in touch with, I want to say it was Shane Bauer, a spokesperson for Apple, I believe. And forgive me if I got that name wrong, but they got in touch with a spokesperson from Apple. And he was like, yeah, no, we just took it off the website. We're still doing it. The plan's still the plan. We're going to do that. Removing it from the website has nothing to do with it, which that's like amazing to me. I think it was Philip Elmer DeWitt over at Apple 3.0 who said, did Apple really think people wouldn't notice? And I don't think it's that. I think what Apple knows is that people are going to forget. People are going to forget, and it's going to happen without anybody even knowing. And if you're fine with that, you're fine with it. And if you're not fine with it, you're going to forget either that or what's awful is then there started to be all these things like, so here's how you hide things you don't want Apple to know you have an iCloud. And I kind of don't want to let that information out because what they're fighting is awful. The question is how they're fighting it. Is that okay? So I don't know. Thoughts, Adam?
Well, what's a little amazing to me is that Apple's getting dinged for their transparency on this more than anything else.
Yeah.
Like other companies do this. Actually, Apple's been supposedly doing a form of this for a long time anyway. But, Google does this. Other companies do this. Other photo services are doing these kinds of fingerprinting and scans and things like that. And ultimately it's for the greater good. Now, obviously, if you're big on privacy, this feels like a massive violation, and it's totally understandable. So it's definitely something worth debating. I think the biggest thing for me is that Apple brought it out in the open, and at least the conversation's happening, right? And people are thinking about this.
Forgive me for interrupting. If I could, I don't think, because I don't believe anybody was saying we don't want you looking for child pornography in iCloud. The problem that everyone is having, and this actually ties more back into the Apple is able to see the picture I'm about to send before I send it and say, hey, are you sure you want to send that? Where a lot of people are getting upset is, what about things that aren't illegal or that aren't illegal now? Things like, have you ever gone to a meeting of the Communist Party? Have you ever gone to a protest or a rally or something like that, where now we know they can read signs and they can literally recognize people? Obviously, that's been a thing for a while. And then to scan that before it goes anyplace and say, like what kinds of things 5 years from now might they be hashing to match in iCloud, and how problematic would that be? That was the big issue. Nobody is going, hey, hands off my child pornography.
Well,
probably some people are, but.
And the related side of that, obviously, is that, the database that they're using now comes from the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, right? The fingerprinting database that they're matching against. But the question then becomes, and especially in light of some of the information that came out about the deals that Apple did with China, is what does it take for an organization to say, well, I want you to match these fingerprints also because you're doing business in our country and, what have you. So the political economic pressures that could be put on Apple to look for other types of images, could be extreme. And so, these are very pertinent things to worry about, right? Like I'm not trying to minimize that in any way, shape, or form, but I do find that the particular, CSAM part of this story is, there's other companies that basically have been doing this and just haven't been transparent about it. And so Apple comes out and is very upfront and sort of says, we're going to start doing this. Right. And they get the biggest reaction. So, and again, it makes sense because it's Apple and, they are a huge tech company.
Yeah. And they did also, as you say, it was their transparency. They came out and it's not like a secret reading 3 pages down or 5 pages down to the TOS. It is, hey, here's the thing we're going to do. Get ready.
My favorite part about this story is, NSO Group. I'll just wrap up with the NSO Group thing because I didn't really comment on that too much. So there's a great podcast called Darknet Diaries. Jack Rhysider is this great podcaster. If you want to know a lot more about this whole NSO Group thing, look into that. But, basically the problem with this company is they're selling these software tools to nation states. They're claiming to kind of monitor it and say, oh, we don't allow them to do anything bad with it. But as we know, like Ken alluded to, governments, they get the software, they get the technology, they're going to use it how they're going to use it. And the policing is really kind of on the surface when it really comes down to it. And so the fact that Apple is taking a stand and going after these guys, for kind of what they've been doing, I think is something in my opinion, to be applauded, So I'm happy to see it happening. They're buying zero-day exploits off of the dark web, basically, and keeping them for themselves. So, finding zero-day exploits. So the fact that, we shut down forced entry, this no-click exploit that they use for messages, probably doesn't mean a lot to them because they have a stockpile of these things, of 0 days sitting out there to replace this one with the next one. So something has to be done to sort of stop this. And, I thought this was a great story this year for Apple actually standing up and going after them, because they're not just targeting Apple, they're targeting everybody with this software.
In a moment, a shift back to hardware when Adam talks iPhone 13, but first a word from SimpliSafe, the right way to protect your home. If you have ever wanted to make your home feel safer, this is the best time to do it. There's still a few days left in this holiday season, which means just a little time for macOS Ken listeners to get in on SimpliSafe's big holiday discount. Right now, you can take 40% off their award-winning home security. I like SimpliSafe because it has everything you need to make your home safe. Indoor and outdoor cameras, comprehensive sensors, all monitored around the clock by trained professionals who send help the moment you need it. They've got it all, but you don't have to get it all. SimpliSafe lets you easily customize the system for your home online in minutes. You get what you need to keep your home safe. And SimpliSafe is simple to set up. I had my sensors, base station, and keypad up and running in under an hour. Simply Safe was named Best Home Security System of 2021 by U.S. News and World Report, and now it can be yours for less. Take advantage of Simply Safe's holiday deals and get 40% off your new home security system by visiting simplysafe.com/macOSKen. SIMPLI. Again, that's simplysafe.com/macOSKen for 40% off your entire system. After the mellow, harshing look at personal data and who might access it, Adam took us down a more enjoyable route.
Let's move back to something a little more fun, like hardware, right? New iPhones, right? New iPhones this year. Apple's been constantly updating their iPhones. I think a lot of people would probably say this was, going back to our earlier conversation, Ken, that this was more of an S year for iPhone. Even though it went from iPhone 12 to iPhone 13, we did see a major redesign of the device. And that usually is what signals when it's that sort of, what do they call it? Super cell or super year or whatever. I always forget the terminology. But, Apple came out with a whole new lineup: iPhone 13, iPhone 13 mini, iPhone 13 Pro Max. We got the new A15 Bionic chip. The big news there was a new 5-core GPU, improved wide-angle cameras, especially on the Pro models. We get new features like the cool cinematic mode, which does that adaptive focusing, which is a lot of fun. Also, again, going back to the Super Retina ProMotion displays, this was a big year for ProMotion, 120 hertz variable refresh rates. And then also kind of a big year for Apple in the hardware side of things with trying to bring ProRes. So we got ProRes video support coming to the Pro model as well. So I don't have a whole lot on iPhone. Again, it was kind of an S year, iterative year. I think a lot of folks are looking to see more happen with the iPhone 14. I think the latest news on that was like this week. There seems to be some indication that we might get a huge jump in megapixels on the wide angle camera, 48 megapixels, up from, I want to say the current is 12. So pretty big leap.
It kind of goes back to the question I was asking you earlier about, can you tell an upgrade cycle year? I mean, are we not to the place kind of like I always think we are with the Mac, where it's like, oh, it's time for me to get a new iPhone. I'm going to get the best iPhone, or the best iPhone for me. I mean, we both know people, you might even be one, I can't remember, who buy iPhones every year.
Yeah, I get one every year.
Okay. I get one. I probably would have skipped this year if we hadn't already promised the phones that we have had to kids down the line,
right?
Basically. That said, 5G is a game changer, and nobody has actually been able to say clearly why 5G is such a game changer, because you say it's faster. And it's like, well, but it's already fast enough, so it's fine. I notice a difference with my 5G, but nobody has been able to say that well enough to me to make me want to buy it. Because I didn't get to 12, and if I hadn't promised my phone away, if I hadn't promised my 11 away, like I say, I wouldn't have gotten the 13. And yet I love it. It still feels like a new phone 4 or 5 months later.
I think the really interesting thing with iPhone and 5G is actually more happening probably in 2022. And it was, reports coming out this year. We're expecting an update to the entry level iPhone SE, the iPhone SE2, which is, Apple's 4.7 inch model. From a hardware perspective, it's not very exciting, right? It's the same design as basically, I think, an iPhone 7, I want to say. So you still got the Touch ID, you still got 4.7 inch display, but they're expecting a processor update to like an A15, maybe an A14, depending, but it's going to get 5G. And because it's that entry level model, there's a huge potential for Android switchers. And so they're expecting that to sell really, really well. And, I think, again, 5G, there's a lot of people that were early adopters this year with, from Apple. Obviously, with Android devices, they were in much earlier. But now that 5G rollouts are wider spread, I think that's where you're going to see, more people moving to 5G this year. So I think, again, that also adds to this, S year super selling year, super sell year, or whatever they call it, right?
Super cycle. I think you're looking for super cycle.
That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. So iPhone 14 may be a super cycle year for a number of reasons, including some of the COVID things and supply chain things you were talking about, because it turned out because there was a shortage, there's a theory that because there was a shortage of iPhone 13s, Apple couldn't meet demand. Obviously, you couldn't get in early. So now you're looking like, oh, well, am I going to buy an iPhone 13 in 2022 when I know I can get a 14 in a few months? And so a lot of people there's a feeling a lot of people might just hold off. And so that will, again, contribute to that super cycle.
A jam-packed day tomorrow. Imaginary products, AirTag. And would it be macOS Ken if we didn't talk about Ted Lasso? More with our friends at the Silicon Valley Mac User Group tomorrow. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by SimpliSafe. Get 40% off your new home security system at simplysafe.com/macOS Ken. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOS Ken. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that will do this special edition of macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.